Hello. Today I wanted to give you a full example of authentication and authorization with Spring Boot Security, JSON Web Token and Angular. And if you're not familiar with Angular or it's not your favorite framework, don't worry, you can do the same or nearly the same thing with Vue.js, React and any other framework, because the patterns behind that are all the same. What do we have here is JSON Web Token in two types, with an access token and a refresh token. And the important point in here is that the access token, if you ever wonder what the difference is a short-lived token which can unlimitedly access resources, while the request token, the refresh token, is a long-lived token which can only be used once, and when it's used, it's getting invalidated. So if someone steals your token, your refresh token, and he uses it, and then you use the token he stole right now from you, you will both get locked out and he can't do any harm anymore. So you will always know, or nearly always know, if someone stole your token, and he won't have very much fun with it. Besides that, I also added some more security in there, because I always also check the IP address. If the IP address differs, it's also the end for this user. He can't do anything anymore. So now just log in the example application to see what's happening. In here I made the login post, and then on this side, which is very simple right now, but I will design it later, we will have two fetches in the background, and every request sends authorization token to the backend to say, hey, I have the permissions and I have the roles and so on to be there. But now our short-lived token is run out of time, just 30 seconds in this case. And now if I try to load again, I see it's first loading the refresh token and the no access token in here. And then after the refresh is done, right, then it's fetching the data. So this request were first, but they were put on hold until the refresh token was done. And I will show you how I did this in Angular, and I'm pretty sure in Vue.js and every other framework it's very more easier to do than in Angular, because you can easily use async await by default without doing some crazy stuff in the Angular observable XJS world. So, but now first let's go to the backend and we start the security configuration, which is very easy in this case. We need what we always need, the password encoder bean, we need the authentication provider bean or some other authentication provider bean, and we need security filters chain. And in here we have two special filters. This is user login filter and the JWT token filter, and the rest is pretty much default, right? We have CORS enabled. I have a video on how to fix CORS issues with Angular. It's very easy, and it's very easy in Vite, and it's very easy everything you do with Vite. And so if you use React or Vue.js, use this with Vite and it's good, or White, whatever it's called. And before, you need these dependencies. I use Spring Security for sure, but you need some library for generating your JSON Web Token, and that's the library I use. You can use any other. They are all fine, probably, and they're all working kind of the same. So that's for that. Now just two routes in here configured: public. Every other route is permit all, is any request, and has role admin. So you need a role be authenticated and have the role. And never forget, it's stateless, no state in here. So now first let's go to the user login filter. Extends UsernamePasswordAuthenticationFilter, and you just need to override those two methods. And One is attempt authentication. You get the user credentials, in my case the JSON body, so it's a little bit special here, but you can also use request parameter, and then it's very easy to get this informations. You fetch the user by his username, and you generate an authentication token with, in my case, username, the salt plus the password, because I have a special salt for every user. So if someone, however, gets hold on my database, he cannot just compare the hash passwords with some rainbow table and see, oh yeah, that's 1234, and now I can go use the email and this password for any other app this user is using, because he will never find these passwords because it's totally random. Okay, then you use the authentication provider to authenticate. If this authentication is successful, then you go in here, secure authentication, to generate your tokens. Let's see, very easy. You just create an algorithm. I use public and private key. You can look in the repository how it's generated, or I have another video for that also. And you create the refresh token with just subject, issuer, and the dates, and sign it with the algorithm. And in the create access token, I also have the roles in here, and you can add more claims if you want to. Or other methods in here is just validate. You can there are multiple exceptions in here you can use. So not in here, but in here. So you can react to all those specific exceptions, but I don't need that right now, so I don't do it. And then just a method for getting username, get expires at, and that's all. Let's go to the token filter again, and just setting those generated tokens, storing the session. Session is stored in my database in here, as you see. It has an ID, user ID, remote address, revoked, boolean, the refresh token when it expires, and some other data here. So now done with that, not very much. Token filter is the next. This is extends OncePerRequestFilter, so it's called whatever request, and just for this request, so you authenticate yourself for one request. If the request is done, you are not authenticated anymore. Perfect. Getting the header from the or the token from the header. If the header is null, you are dead. You are out. Bye. And if there's not the prefix BERA, also dead. Ciao. But if that's valid everything, then you can splice it up and get the token, remove the BERA part here. With the BERA part removed, you validate the token. Is it the fitting algorithm, is it a fitting key, and so on, and is it not expired, yada yada. And if that's also valid, then you can load the username with the UserDetailsService. So you need some class that implements UserDetailsService, and they just need this one method, load by username. You get the username, load the user, can use Hibernate, whatever. And if the user is not found, in my case I use an optional, user not found, exception, dead, but can't do anything, ciao. So if the user is there, I add the roles, use this user builder in here, set username, password, and mapping the roles to this array. And important in here is you don't need to add the prefix role underscore, because if you use this roles function in here, this builder, you get this. They're doing this for you. With that, we have now our user details user, so security user. We generate authentication token, don't need to set the password in here. We have already checked this. So, and then you just generate the authentication, and this authentication, set some details, and set the authentication to the security context folder, and then you're authenticated. So that's all for that. And now we just need to look on how the refresh token is working. So in here I have endpoint refresh token under this API authentication, And in here I do the same again, but this time before the JWT token filter, it was always the access token. Here in this case it's the refresh token. So I just check authorization if there's a refresh token in it, and I do the same. Has it BRA, I trim it, I validate it, and then I load the user, I create the token, authentication token, and then with authentication token I generate a new refresh token and a new access token, and I return a token response with the access token and the refresh token, and that's all. So it's look like it's a lot, but it's not that much at all. So if you feel overwhelmed right now, this code is in my GitHub repository. I will always keep this updated, because I will build on this application for a few months more at least, because it will be kinda big and special, and will also add a fancy design at some point. Maybe not too fancy, but at least decent looking design. So this will be updated, and I will also update the versions of Spring Boot and Spring Security and everything, so it stays up to date. So now we have that, and if we go in here and we see, if you refresh token, and refreshes are done, and if I say in here my timer, oh, maybe I am working on a blog post, my timer is running low, but I can't leave the site and make some refresh. I just click refresh, yay, refresh token, new access token, everything is fine. Let's see how this happens in the front end, which, as I mentioned already, is similar in other front ends and other frameworks. So, and also one point to mention, when we have a root guard, when we log out, we can't just add in here dashboard or whatever. No, that's not working. We need to be logged in and authenticated, and we also in this case need the authorization, because all the roots are behind the admin role, which is checked in this guard. Yeah, you can define an auth guard, which is just a class, and you in here I check if I'm authenticated. If I'm not done, by redirect to the root page. If I check if the user has the roles with this 2 lines, and then I go to the roots. In here I have my can activate function where I use this AuthenticationGuard with this admin, and I just set this here can activate and can activate child. Right, so this also blocks access for every child route. So it's actually probably, I don't even know, not needed that I have this in here too, because it's blocked anyway, because the childs are blocked, children are blocked. So anyway, let's look at the main, what we need to import in here. Not in the main. Let's go first in here. We need auth0 Angular JWT. I use it for decoding the token, working with the token a little bit easier. Then I need to provide it in here with the JWT module for root, and I can set a token getter, which is defined in here. I actually don't use it, but you can use it so it can access the token. Access token is, but maybe you need 2 token getters. You have 2 tokens. Who knows? So I don't use it. Whatever. Let's go to the authentication service, and in here a login method, posting to login. We observe. So with this observe I have access to the weak response headers. I can take response header, can get the access token, check if it's null. Okay, so an error. I can do the same. I can set the access token. Yeah, let's go in here. Token storage. Just 3 methods: get token, set token, remove token, and in here local storage, get item, set item, remove item. It's very basic, very easy, but so you know it's there. Then the same with the refresh token, getting it from the header in the login, check if it's there and setting it, and then navigating to the dashboard. Logout is a little bit clunky right now, but post logout, and anyway whatever happens error, success. Don't know, error can actually happen right now. So just delete those tokens from the storage and navigate to the root page. And the refresh, it's just posting, split it up, posting to this API authentication refresh token, waiting for the request, setting the tokens again. Here are some helper methods, checking if authenticated, which just checks if the token is there, and if it's not expired, I can't verify it in here in the front end, and I can check here with if I have roles, and I can check get the expire state, which is for that timer, and is token expired? Yeah, obviously. Name is obvious. So that's all for that. Just some methods, login, logout, refresh, and some helper methods. And now the hard part is the interceptor. So with every request we are doing, we are setting the token. We don't want to do that in every HTTP client request. So we just have an interceptor. We implement HTTP interceptor, and in our main we set this interceptor with provide HTTP interceptor use class. This is the interceptor, and that's all. And in here, lots of code, looking very complicated, so I will say what it's doing. If we don't have an access token or we're trying to log in, we just going on with the request, nothing special, just skip that. If we have a totally normal request with our access token is there, we just do that. We take the access token, add it to the header, and send the request. Perfect, fine, easy. But what now if our token is expired, like it's in here? So in that case, you see in the background it tries to fetch these two endpoints, but there is no access token. So what it needs to do first, getting call this refresh token endpoint and getting a new access token and a new refresh token in the process, but actually to get the new access token. So in here, if we looking at our answer, there's access token, look at the last V, and now it closed it, V and Y. And if you go in here and see, in here you see here is the token used. So we hold those two requests back and waiting for the refresh token response. And when we got the response, then we giving them the new access token, and we are sending those response to fetching or sending those requests to the backend. So how is it done? In this case, I check if the token is about to expire. I have a little offset, 5 seconds. And when the token is about to expire, I check if I'm already refreshing. When I'm refreshing, already I say, okay, retrieve failed request. I will store this back. If not, I will set refreshing to. I will set this refresh token subject is here to null. And the important thing is that I have a filter in here which says null. I don't care. I don't do anything when there is a new null value in here. Do nothing. Then I will make my post refresh. We saw that here, AP authentication refresh token, and I do a switch map or XJS stuff. In said it's very much easier in other frameworks probably. So I will just send switch maps. That means I'm switching from one observable to another observable, so to say. And with that I take from the response access token, refresh token. I set the refresh token to the local storage. I set refreshing false, and I set the access token to the refresh token subject, and I return the retry failed request, which is this subject with a pipe, and those requests and next function. And with that, it's doing nothing. It's storing up the request, and when then there is not null in here, it will now then send all the requests out and add the header with a new token to it. So which we stored in here next. access token. That's all, but it's kinda hard to come up with it probably. And if you don't need to worry, you don't need to code it yourself, you can just use my repository, as I said. So we are now about 20 minutes in this video. I guess we saw all the important things. And if you have any questions or anything is not working or whatever, if any issues, just leave a comment and I will answer to that comment. Yes, you don't need to figure that out on your own for 5 days. If it's not working after 2 hours, just leave a comment and I will respond to it. So one thing I forgot to talk about was a session service. And we have 4 methods in here with the set session, update session, validate and remove session. And in set session, it's just called in the user login filter. There we will get a token and the remote address, so the IP address, and we try to find the user, which is the subject of the token. And then if we have any old sessions for this user, we delete them, and then we create a new session and set that. Update session, which is called in the authentication service when we call the refresh token, or the refresh token is called. And in here we will try to find the old session, and then we want to just update the old session with a new expired at, a new updated at, and so we are setting the new refresh token. So, and then we have the validate session method in here, which we call in the authentication service before we update our session. So if the session is invalid, we are not doing nothing, and the session is invalid if it's actually empty. So if the session is empty, we will drop out and do nothing. And maybe if we find another session by the user, we will set the session to revoked. So if that's the case, if a token is used twice and a new session is generated already, or every session for that user will be revoked because there's something fishy when the token is used 2 times. And then we will check if the session is actually valid and not expired, and we will check if it's not revoked, and we will check if the IP addresses are the same, because I only allow users with the same IP address. So if they are switching Wi-Fi, whatever, they have to log in again. And the last session is remove sessions, so we find all sessions by the user, by the current user, and delete them. And this is called in logout. And if you wonder what the current user is, this is just a little helper service which takes the security context folder and getting some information with the help of the security context. So with that, I also showed you this about the sessions, and I don't have my database running. Let's start Docker, and the sessions are then here in the database, which in this case is an expired session from yesterday evening. So I hope that will help you, and I wish you a good day.